There's a moment, quiet, breathless, when everything you thought was certain collapses. The relationship you built your life around ends. The dream you nurtured begins to fade. The version of yourself you trusted no longer feels like home. And in that moment, fear moves in. Fear of loss, fear of the unknown, fear that maybe this is the end of you. But what if endings aren't here to destroy you? What if they're the universe's most intimate invitation to begin again? Not as who you were, but as who you are meant to become. Because the truth is, the ending you fear isn't the end of you. It's the beginning you've been resisting. We fear endings because they take away what we know, and what we know feels safe. Certainty has a comforting rhythm. The routine of love, the predictability of connection, the familiarity of a life we can recognize. When something ends, it's not just the loss of a person or a dream, it's the loss of a map. Suddenly, you're standing in a territory you don't understand, and fear begins to whisper that maybe you'll never find your way again. That's the moment when the ground beneath you feels like it's shifting, and everything inside of you wants to cling to what was. Even if what was has already stopped nurturing you. Fear shows up when certainty leaves because endings force us to confront the unknown. They demand that we meet ourselves without the roles that defined us. Who are you when the person who validated you is gone? Who are you when the dream that once fueled you no longer exists? These questions can feel unbearable because they strip us of identity, of control, of illusion. But what if this is exactly where life wants you? Unmasked, undone, available to transformation. We tend to believe that fear is a sign we're in danger. But often, fear is simply the signal that we're standing at the threshold of change. It's not an enemy, it's an invitation. It tells you that you are stepping beyond the edges of your comfort into a space where growth becomes possible. The problem is, we mistake the discomfort of expansion for the warning of destruction. So instead of walking through the door, we pull it shut and call it safety. We stay in relationships long after love has turned into habit. We stay in jobs that drain us because at least they are predictable. We stay small because the unknown feels too wide, too uncontrollable, too alive. But endings have a wisdom that fear tries to hide from you. They don't come to erase you. They come to reveal what can no longer coexist with who you are becoming. They peel away the layers that kept you stuck in repetition, in cycles of emotional familiarity that might have felt like love, but were really survival. And if you can bear the discomfort of that unraveling, you start to see that what's ending is not your life. It's the version of your life that could no longer hold your growth. Fear will always try to convince you that the ending is a threat. But it's not a threat, it's a teacher. It's the voice asking, are you ready to trust what comes next, even if you can't yet see it? And maybe that's the work, to learn to trust that the collapse of what was is not a punishment, but a preparation. To understand that the absence of certainty isn't emptiness, it's space. And in that space, life begins to move again. Because when fear arrives, it's not the end of you. It's the sign that something new, something honest, something freer is trying to begin. When loss enters your life, it rarely knocks. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just arrives, sometimes softly, sometimes like a storm, and suddenly what was once familiar becomes foreign. You look around, and everything feels altered. The air, the silence, the rhythm of your days. And naturally, the question arises, why me? What did I do to deserve this? We tend to see loss as punishment, as something unfair, a correction for something we must have done wrong. But loss is not a punishment. It is a mirror. And in that mirror, we are invited to see not what's being taken away, but what is being revealed. Loss reflects our attachments, the people, the stories, the identities we've tied our worth to. It shows us where we've anchored our sense of self in someone else's validation, in something outside our control. It illuminates how often we confuse familiarity with love or stability with happiness. We hold on because the known, even when painful, feels safer than the uncertainty of release. But loss interrupts that illusion. It says, look again. It forces us to witness the places where we've settled for less than our truth, where we've mistaken comfort for connection or dependency for devotion. The beauty of loss, though it rarely feels beautiful, is that it strips life back to its essence. It confronts you with yourself, not the self you perform, but the self that remains when everything else is gone. You begin to notice what's real. You begin to understand that love cannot be possessed, that control cannot protect you, and that closure isn't always something you receive. Sometimes it's something you create within yourself. And yet, loss is not just about absence. It's also about space. When something or someone leaves, the silence that follows is not emptiness. It's potential. It's an invitation to reimagine who you can become now that you're no longer confined by what was. The pain you feel is the echo of what mattered, the residue of your investment in love, hope, and meaning. That pain is proof of your capacity to connect, to care deeply. But it's also proof of your resilience, that even when your heart cracks open, you still have the courage to feel. Loss teaches you to differentiate between what was temporary and what is eternal. The love that was real doesn't die, it changes form. It becomes wisdom, compassion, a deeper understanding of yourself and others. It softens you in ways that control never could. The very breaking you resist becomes the portal to wholeness. Because only through loss do we learn the delicate balance between holding on and letting go. And perhaps, in that mirror of loss, you'll come to realize that what you've truly lost isn't love or safety or belonging. What you've lost is the illusion that these things could only come from outside of you. Because what remains after everything falls away is not emptiness, it's you. When something ends, it leaves behind an emptiness that most of us can't bear to face. We rush to fill it with distractions, new relationships, new goals, new noise. We tell ourselves we're moving on, but in truth, we're running from the silence that endings create. That silence feels unbearable because it exposes what we don't want to feel. The grief, the confusion, the ache of absence. Yet it's precisely in that emptiness that something sacred begins to stir. Every ending carries within it a hidden invitation. The invitation to pause, to listen, to make space for what wants to be born next. We are so conditioned to see progress as movement, to believe that if we're not doing something, we're falling behind. But beginnings don't always arrive with fanfare. They often arrive quietly, disguised as stillness. The ground must be cleared before anything new can grow. Think of it. The forest renews itself only after the fire. The soil becomes fertile only after what once stood there has been broken down. And the same is true for us. When something in your life ends, a relationship, a dream, a season, it is not a void to fear, but a clearing that life has made for you. But we don't like the waiting. We don't like not knowing, so we grasp. We chase closure like it's a door we can slam shut, and we fill the silence before we can hear what it's trying to tell us. Yet the truth is, if you rush into what's next without honoring what's ended, you carry the weight of the past into your new beginning. You repeat the same patterns in a different setting. You call it fate, but really, it's just unfinished mourning. Healing doesn't happen by replacing. It happens by integrating. There's a deep wisdom in the in-between. That delicate space after the old story has ended and before the new one begins. It's uncomfortable, yes, because it lacks certainty, but it's also profoundly creative. It's where you get to redefine what matters, where you start to rebuild from authenticity rather than fear. In that silence, you meet parts of yourself you never had time to notice. The resilience beneath the grief, the clarity within the confusion, the strength you didn't know you had until everything familiar disappeared. It takes courage to not fill the void, to allow the silence to speak. Because when you stop running from it, you realize that emptiness is not the absence of meaning. It's the space where meaning is born. You don't need to rush to fill it. You need to allow yourself to be shaped by it. Only then can what is meant for you find its way in. Because sometimes, what feels like an ending isn't asking you to move faster. It's asking you to become still enough to receive what's next. Every ending changes you, whether you acknowledge it or not. It leaves fingerprints on the way you love, the way you trust, the way you see yourself. You cannot walk through loss or heartbreak and remain untouched. Something shifts, something softens. Something deep inside you learns that even when life dismantles your plans, you are still capable of breathing, still capable of being. The pain doesn't just break you, it carves you into someone new. At first, it's disorienting. You no longer recognize yourself. The things that once defined you, the titles, the relationships, the roles, no longer fit. You feel like you're standing between versions of yourself, caught between what you used to be and what you're becoming. That space can feel lonely, almost unbearable. But transformation rarely happens in comfort. It happens in those quiet, uncertain hours when you're forced to rebuild your sense of self from the ground up. You begin to notice that strength no longer looks like what it used to. It isn't about holding everything together, pretending to be fine, or proving you've moved on. Real strength is learning how to let go, not with bitterness, but with grace. It's understanding that you don't need to fight for what's already gone. That acceptance doesn't mean surrendering your worth. It means trusting that what's left is enough to start again. And as you release, you start to see that endings don't erase you, they reveal you. They peel back the layers you've worn to survive. The need to please, to prove, to hold on, until all that's left is something unshakably real. You discover that you are not defined by what you lost, but by what you choose to build from it. You are not the same person who entered the ending, and that's the point. Growth demands a shedding. Healing demands a becoming. Sometimes the transformation is quiet, a shift in how you speak to yourself, how you treat your body, how you respond to love. Other times it's radical, a new path, a new purpose, a new way of seeing the world. But either way, something in you expands. You realize that what you thought was breaking you was actually refining you. The pain that felt like destruction was only removing what could no longer travel with you into the next chapter. And so, slowly, gently, you begin to recognize yourself again, not as who you were before the ending, but as who you are after it. Stronger, softer, more awake. You carry both the ache and the wisdom, and you begin to understand that they can coexist. That's the beauty of renewal. It doesn't ask you to forget what happened. It asks you to grow because of it. Because in truth, endings don't take away who you are. They uncover who you were always meant to be. There's a moment after every ending when you find yourself searching for answers. You replay conversations in your mind, dissect every choice, question every sign you might have missed. You ask, why did this happen to me? As if the right answer could undo the pain. But life rarely offers that kind of clarity. The truth is, the why often keeps us trapped in the past, tangled in what-ifs, circling around the same wounds, hoping that understanding the reason will soften the ache. Yet healing doesn't live in the why. Healing begins when we shift our gaze forward, when we begin to ask, what now? The question of why looks backward, it seeks justification. The question of what now looks inward, it seeks transformation. It asks you to take what has happened and decide what it will mean for your becoming. It doesn't deny the pain. It acknowledges it, but it refuses to let that pain be the only story you tell. When you start asking, what now? You reclaim authorship. You stop waiting for closure from others and begin creating it for yourself. This shift doesn't happen overnight. At first, it feels unnatural to move from mourning to meaning. You may feel like you're betraying your loss by trying to move forward. But healing isn't betrayal. It's respect for your own aliveness. It's choosing to believe that even though something has ended, you are still worthy of what comes next. It's allowing yourself to be both grieving and growing at the same time. Every ending carries a lesson wrapped in heartbreak. Sometimes it's a lesson about love, about the difference between being chosen and being valued. Sometimes it's a lesson about boundaries, about how far you've gone trying to be understood by someone who never intended to listen. And sometimes it's a lesson about self-worth, the realization that your peace was too often traded for the comfort of being needed. When you start to see these patterns, when you let the lesson rise above the pain, the story begins to change. What now doesn't mean pretending you're fine. It means asking what this experience has to teach you about who you are becoming. It means choosing curiosity over bitterness, reflection over resentment. It means looking at your own part in the story, not to blame yourself, but to understand yourself. Because growth is not about proving anyone wrong. It's about no longer needing to. You will know you are healing when you can hold the memory of what ended without needing to rewrite it. When you can see that it shaped you without defining you. That's when you'll realize that the ending wasn't there to punish you. It was there to redirect you. It closed one chapter not because your story was over, but because you were meant to begin again. This time from a place of truth. Because the moment you stop asking, why, and start asking, what now, you stop waiting for life to happen to you and begin to live it with intention. It's only with time and distance that we begin to see how endings, the ones that once felt unbearable, were quietly working in our favor. When you're inside the storm, all you can see is the loss. The emptiness where something used to be, the H that fills every quiet moment. You can't yet see the purpose behind the pain because the new beginning hasn't taken shape. It's still forming, quietly, beneath the surface of your grief. But one day, often when you least expect it, you'll look back and realize that what you thought was breaking you is actually building you. What you thought was an ending was really an opening. Sometimes the things that fall apart are not being taken from you. They are being cleared from your path. The relationship that ended may have been teaching you to stop begging for love that had already left the room. The job that slipped away may have been freeing you from the version of yourself that forgot how to dream. The person who walked away may have been making space for you to finally walk toward yourself. Life has a way of protecting you through disruption, of removing what cannot stay, so that what's meant for you can find its way in. It's easy to label what hurts as rejection. But if you look closely, you'll see that not everything that ends is a loss. Some endings are protection in disguise. Some endings are redirections too merciful for you to understand in the moment. The people who leave, the dreams that dissolve, the chapters that close, they often make room for something you would never have reached if everything had stayed the same. You see, life doesn't just take, it rearranges. It doesn't just end things, it prepares you. And yet, to receive that new beginning, you have to release your idea of how things were supposed to go. You have to loosen your grip on the story you were writing in your mind and allow life to edit it with grace. Because the beginning you need will rarely look like the one you planned. It might come disguised as a detour, a disappointment, or a delay. But hidden within those moments is a wisdom that only time can reveal. The realization that you were never being punished, you were being positioned. When the new beginning arrives, it won't announce itself loudly. It will come softly, in a moment of peace where there used to be pain, in a quiet clarity that makes sense of what once felt chaotic. You'll find yourself breathing easier, feeling lighter, and you'll realize that this peace, this freedom, could never have existed without the ending that came before it. Because sometimes, the ending you feared most was never here to destroy you. It was here to deliver you to the life you were always meant to live.